passengers, I hope you enjoyed learning about Howard Theater. Our next stop is Busboys and Poets. We will be traveling along U Street and making a right onto 14th. We're here. Enjoy the tour. The TMCT Narrative Virtual Tour you are about to watch is one of several virtual tours. Each virtual tour is narrated by a knowledgeable expert in the field. The presenter for the tour you are currently watching is Andy Shalal. Thank you and enjoy the tour.
Hello, I'm Andy Shalal. I'm the CEO and founder of Busboys and Poets, which is a local gathering place here in Washington, D.C. It's a cultural center that brings art, culture, and politics together and intentionally collides them. We are a place that uplifts people when they walk in through the door, a place that really represents D.C. and it's all of its layers.
Busboys and Poets is a full-service restaurant, bar, bookstore, coffee shop, and events venue in Washington, D.C. Founded in 2005 by Andy Shalal.
So all of these layers coming together to create a space that represents DC was important to me, having grown up here in the city for many years. And I wanted a space that I wanted to go to that has its own unique DC identity. I was tired of people coming in and saying, this is so New York, this is so LA, this is so this and that, but never this is so DC. And I thought, well, why not? You know, DC has its own character. Why not create something that really does feel and look like DC? And that's where Busboys and Poets was born.
The original Busboys and Poets is located at 14th and V in the U Street corridor. The name refers to American poet Langston Hughes, who worked as a busboy at the Wardman Park Hotel in the 1930s, prior to gaining recognition as a poet.
Busboys and Poets is named after the great African-American poet Langston Hughes, probably one of the most prolific and best-known poets of the 20th century, certainly. Langston Hughes grew up in D.C. for a short period of time. He didn't grow up really here, but he lived here for a short period of time. He worked as a busboy at the Wardman Park Hotel, which is still there in Woodley Park in Washington. And one day when he was working there, a very famous poet by the name of Vacha Lindsay, who happened to be in town for some kind of conference, happened to walk into the restaurant where Langston Hughes was working. The young Langston Hughes at that time, was 22 years old, slipped some of his poetry next to Vacha Lindsay's plate. So the next day on his way to work, Langston Hughes picks up the newspaper and on it said that Vacha Lindsay had discovered a busboy poet. A couple months later, he was able to leave that job and work full-time as a poet and speaker and writer, and traveled all over the United States after that.
Shalal painted the giant civil rights movement themed mural covering one wall of the restaurant, titled Peace in Struggle Wall. He refuses to sign the mural, saying this would be a final gesture that would preclude him from making revisions later. The collage depicts civil rights icons including the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. and Nelson Mandela. It features the words of Langston Hughes, "Let America be America again. Let it be the dream it used to be."
So I studied Langston Hughes when I was in middle school. It was one of the first really people of the Harlem Renaissance that I was introduced to. We had a really gifted teacher that was very much interested in teaching us American history through the Harlem Renaissance. And learning about Langston Hughes, he also required us to memorize poetry. Well, I didn't speak in English. I had just come from Iraq very recently, was 10 years old at the time, and she made us memorize poetry. Of course, not speaking the language, I could still memorize, but I didn't understand the words. But it was very empowering to be able to say words that you may not know what they mean, but they're coming out of your mouth. So I memorized lots of Langston Hughes poetry. I still have it in my head. And so the poem "Let America Be America Again," one of the most iconic poems that he'd written, really represented to me exactly where we are today in America. Certainly, when I opened in 2005, things have changed, of course, quite a bit, but still, America is still a work in progress, and that's what Langston Hughes was talking about, the America that could be. And I wanted to share that kind of sentimentality and that kind of sentiment with folks that walk into Busboys and Poets, to be able to see this is how I see America as well. As an immigrant coming to this country, I heard of that America that's amazing and incredible and egalitarian, and everybody's free, and this is home of the brave, blah blah blah. But then when you come here, you recognize there's lots and lots of flaws in America, as it is in many other nations, of course. But we have to address those flaws, and we have to work on them in order for us to become a more perfect union, as our Constitution states. So that's really kind of where I kind of started with it. I love the idea of having a space where people can come and eat and be able to connect with one another. They otherwise may not have an opportunity to do that because it's like a watering hole, right? Everybody comes to it, and then once they're there, magic happens. People start connecting with each other. They start talking to each other. They break bread together. And suddenly you start breaking barriers and connect people from opposite ends of the city sometimes that otherwise wouldn't have opportunities to see each other. And I think it can make for a better, more cohesive, community. And that was kind of the idea behind Busboys and Poets.